Okay, let's dive into this. We've got quite a stack of sources here. INV, India Today, AP, BBC, others too, and some briefing notes. And they're all focusing on this severe humanitarian crisis in Gaza, specifically the struggle for food and aid. Our mission in this deep dive is really to pull out the key details from these reports about the recent tragic events at aid sites.
Right, and it's an incredibly stark picture these sources paint together.
Yeah.
You see people facing just critical hunger. It's gotten so bad. One report quotes a boy saying they're ready to die for food. That kind of desperation. Well,
It leads to terrible outcomes.
exactly. Deadly incidents.
So let's look at Wednesday, May 28th. The sources describe hundreds of Palestinians storming a UN World Food Program warehouse, central Gaza, shouting, shoving. Reports even say ripping pieces off the building to get in, just desperate for food.
Yeah, in the aftermath. The sources differ slightly on the numbers, which can happen in chaos. Hospital officials reported 7 deaths from the crush and, well, the general mayhem. Other reports are more specific about the warehouse itself, saying 4 died there, 2 crushed reportedly, and 2 from gunfire. Though the origin of the shots wasn't immediately clear in those initial reports.
Right.
And the WFP itself, they called it alarming and deteriorating, talked about hordes of hungry people.
That language really tells you something about the scene. And this wasn't isolated, was it? This followed something similar just the day before, Tuesday, May 27th.
That was at a new aid distribution spot near Rafah, set up by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, the GHF.
And the sources note this GHF is reportedly backed by the U.S. and Israel, kind of intended to bypass the UN system, it seems.
That's the context, yeah. And reports say a crowd overran that facility, too.
Yeah.
It came under fire.
What were the reported casualties there?
Gaza's health ministry reported at least 1 Palestinian killed, 48 wounded. A Red Cross hospital noted many had gunshot wounds.
But who did the shooting? That's where it gets murky, right?
Very. The sources present conflicting accounts. The Israeli military said only warning shots were fired. The GHF said their private contractors who were guarding the site didn't open fire at all.
But the Red Cross reports gunshot wounds, even in women and children, according to some accounts.
Exactly. So those claims are challenged by the physical evidence reported. It just underscores how hard it is to get undisputed facts on the ground in these situations.
Yeah, definitely. And these terrible incidents, they really throw the larger problem into sharp relief, don't they? Getting aid in at all.
Absolutely. The sources are pretty consistent here. The current aid flow, very limited. You know, Israeli authorities recently noted 121 trucks got in one day. But compare that, several sources point out during a previous ceasefire, it was around 600 trucks daily.
Wow, 121 versus 600, that's a huge difference.
It is. And a UN envoy used this really powerful analogy called the limited aid, a lifeboat after the ship has sunk. They said people have lost hope, so much so that instead of goodbye, people are saying, see you in heaven.
That's incredibly bleak. And it brings us back to that GHF system controversy, the U.S. and Israel backing it, reportedly to stop Hamas diverting aid.
That's the stated reason, yes. An allegation Hamas denies, the sources add.
But the UN and other aid groups aren't on board with this GHF plan.
No, they've pushed back hard, calling it unworkable and unethical. They argue it could, force people to move just to get aid, which raises concerns about displacement. And some sources mention accusations that Israel might be using food as leverage. The UN insists its own systems work to prevent diversion and just wants a massive surge of aid through established channels.
So you have these competing systems, these political layers, on top of just desperate human need.
Precisely. And behind all the logistics, all the different reports, is the human cost. The sources remind us of the huge number of Palestinians killed since October 2023. Mostly women and children reported.
Yeah, and you see glimpses of that pain, like the report of the Palestinian ambassador getting emotional at the UN Security Council talking about the children.
It really grounds the whole thing. This isn't just about trucks and systems.
So, thinking about all this, what does it mean for you, the listener? Well, these sources paint this picture of absolute desperation for food in Gaza. It's leading to incredibly dangerous, sometimes fatal situations, right, where help is supposed to be arriving.
Yeah, and it highlights all these complex challenges. Not enough aid getting in, these different delivery systems clashing, conflicting stories about violence, and it all just adds up to immense human suffering.
Which really leaves us with a heavy question, doesn't it? Something for you to think about.
When people are facing such dire, basic survival needs, how do all these mechanisms, these controversies around the aid itself, become so central to their actual lived experience of just trying to stay alive?